we've heard of Sustainable Development Goals, and I think people might be able to name a few. SDG 7, talk to us about what it says and why it's important.
Well, again, thank you for having me. But why it's so important are the key elements you just mentioned: affordable, reliable, and sustainable, and modern energy for all. This is important because energy is key to a lot of the other SDGs. Energy is key to health, energy is key to education, energy is key to pretty much everything that we're looking for as an economy to really develop. And with almost 789 million people around the world, we're still without sustainable energy, and 565 million of them in Africa. It's important that we all rally around and do what we have to do to actually recover better with sustainable energy for all.
All right, and I look at COVID-19, and many people talk about the disruption that it's caused, and in many ways has accelerated the need for developing countries to catch up and also prepare for the new order, as it were. And a lot of that is going to be dependent on energy. So talk to us a little bit about energy, and particularly during a time of a pandemic such as COVID-19.
I mean, apart from the pandemic, you need sustainable energy just for dignity of people and lifelines and economic growth. But because of the pandemic, it has really shown us that energy access saves lives. You can't really tell people to stay at home if they have no electricity, no access to clean cooking. It's just not feasible. The other point why it's so important because of a pandemic is the healthcare systems. So even if you bought all the equipment in the world, you will still need energy to power those systems. And that's why it's so important just to prepare us, because this might not be our only pandemic, for these horrible events that happen. But it's just to also emphasize that this is actually good for economic growth as well. This is what we've been saying, that the more you can make sure household energy is powered, but also business and SMEs are powered, the more economic growth there would be, and the more countries can actually recover better, faster, and obviously cleaner.
All right, so before this job as a special representative of the UN Secretary General, and also working at Sustainable Energy for All, you had your feet on the ground working in Nigeria, so you understand the lay of the land. And I'm just wondering, what can Africa's authorities do to accelerate this process of developing energy, and not just energy, but sustainable, clean energy?
I mean, there's a lot of things they can do. As you said, I did spend 10 years on ground trying to implement energy access programs, and there are quite a few things that can happen. So first is to see energy as an opportunity. The numbers and the evidence speaks for itself. For every dollar you spend towards transition to clean renewable energies, you actually get 0.93 cents back of additional GDP. And it's also important that you also get 3 times the amount of jobs than the fossil equivalent, not to talk about the gender figures that you can get. So it's to understand it as an economic drive. But in order to do this, African countries actually have to do quite a few enablers, which is what we speak about in the guide we've just brought out, Recover Better with Sustainable Energy for African countries. So, cost reflective tariff is important. Investment in clean energy in the value chain is important. Investment in data and in people. So to be able to say what is the best and the cleanest energy source to power people is critical. And the talent as well that you have working within your institutions and your government needs to match the people you'd be discussing with in terms of negotiating loans. I ran the largest energy access program, I guess, on the continent, 550 million, with the World Bank and AFDB. But we had a pool of very, very talented Nigerians that could negotiate this. So there are a load of things that have to be done. Well, we're just really positive that it seems like African countries really do want to recover better because they see the economic growth in that. And that's really important to us to have an economic sense of it. So we're not just saying recover green, we're saying recover green because that's the best way to get you out of this crisis.
You deal with politicians and people in authority all the time now, I guess, and I just wonder, do they get the urgency and the business sense actually for going down these roads?
Well, that's one of the things we're trying to educate in sustainable energy for all, and that's why we're focusing more on the data to tell the stories. To be fair to a lot of politicians, it hasn't. Sometimes energy is sometimes broken, hasn't been broken down into language that everybody. And there's an urgency with everybody. Everyone realizes health systems, agricultural systems, which a lot of people are looking to recover better. All of it is fueled by energy. And even when there's a vaccine, I mean, the vaccine right now, they're saying is going to be, stored in minus 90 degrees. How is it going to get to the last mile if you don't make sure you have some form of mobile sustainable energy? So those are the discussions that we have been having, and I have been quite encouraged. So to give an example, my country, which, is one of the largest oil and gas nations, just took away fuel subsidies, which I never thought would happen in my lifetime. So things are actually happening. And, also as a response to this, have decided in their economy that they're going to have 5 million solar connections for Nigerians. That's almost 30 million Nigerians that would be using renewable energy. So we're seeing some encouraging stories happening around the continent.
So Africa is built on people that find solutions for a lot of the problems that we have, and we're very creative and very innovative in that way. Post-COVID, I suspect that we're going to need to move even quicker because of the disruption that's taking place. How do we set ourselves up for a post-COVID era? Because it will look slightly different to what we've known.
I mean, it would look different, but in terms of the energy sense, it's just as important. You have to look for mechanisms. You have to appeal for funding. You have to dedicate a lot of public funding into making sure you really leave no one behind. I mean, what COVID has shown us is that we're all interlinked and we're all interconnected. So it's really important we really invest in energy and the energy supply chain. The other thing that we really need to invest in as Africans is indigenous developers. There's a whole host of, solar renewables to hydros that's actually coming out of the indigenous developers. So one of the key parts of my job is to increase diversity and help support indigenous developers to be able to challenge a lot of the international companies that come into Africa to provide energy resources as well, because a lot of just all around the world, really, the successful kind of power chains and power reforms have been driven by indigenous people. I'm just really excited to support that movement.
And right across the continent, we're at various levels of development. South Africa, perhaps, sort of above 80-something% electrified. And then I think of a country like Liberia, which is probably less than 20%. How do we equalize this? Because some countries have got so much more to do than others.
Again, I don't think the focus is on how to equalize and maybe get a balance of 70%. I think the countries that are running well, like South Africa, which I think is maybe just above 90 now, should continue going and should be shown as exemplars for Africa. But again, you can't leave people behind. So Liberia is a perfect example. So back to Liberia, the ease of doing business is important. The data is very critical. And when I mean the ease of doing business, it's allowing private sector to come in and private financing into their sector. And I feel in the next couple of years, that is what we're going to really see. An influx of, private sector wanting to come into countries that have done all the enablers and have the right regulations and policies to actually allow it to thrive. And this isn't only for on-grid, but also off-grid electrification.